Your place is in the trash. That's where we started. My daughter, Amelia, screaming that over a worn suitcase, standing in the doorway of the Willow Creek mansion. I walked away that day, but I didn't walk far. I couldn't. I had nowhere to go. I had sold my apartment, my one asset, 6 months earlier, listening to her lawyer's smooth, reassuring lies about living rent-free on the property. I walked until my legs gave out, ending up at a small, greasy diner near the highway, the same kind of place I used to clean after midnight. I ordered a terrible coffee, and I just sat there. I wasn't weeping. I was burning. That cold fury I mentioned earlier, it became a wildfire. For 48 hours, I just drifted. I stayed at a cheap motel, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of sacrifice, every slight. I was 68 years old, and my child had made me homeless. She didn't just kick me out. She ripped the last safety net out from under me. And Julian, that spoiled trust fund fiancé of hers, was the tool she used. He was the one who called me the old groundskeeper and ordered me to clear out so he could have his precious yoga studio. On the third day, the grief and the anger solidified into a resolve colder than any corporate boardroom. I thought, she only respects one thing, power. And in her world, power is money. But how does a janitor, an old man with $2,000 to his name, take on a $50 million tech empire? You don't fight fire with fire. You look for a structural flaw. I remembered the early days of Nexus Solutions. When Amelia was just starting, she couldn't afford a real legal team. I was the only one she trusted. I helped her with the mountains of paperwork while she focused on the code. I handled the leases, the initial incorporation documents, the state filings. I sat at that cheap IKEA desk in her first tiny office, reading every page of the Series A investment agreement. Not because I understood finance, but because I'm a cautious man who once had to read every line item on a grocery receipt. One piece of paper kept nagging at me. It was the initial founder's agreement. It was a boilerplate document Amelia had downloaded and modified herself, proud of saving money on a lawyer. It established her as the majority stakeholder. But there was a small, almost invisible mistake I had pointed out back then. It related to the licensing of the core intellectual property. Nexus Solutions wasn't just logistics software. It was based on an algorithm she'd written in college to predict supply chain disruptions. The agreement stated that the IP was licensed to the company from the initial owner, Amelia, in exchange for her majority share. But that initial agreement was poorly drafted. And crucially, to satisfy an early investor, they had rushed the signing. The document required the signature of a third-party witness who was unrelated to the financial structure of the corporation. I was that witness. And I wasn't just a witness. I also happened to own the domain name the company used for its main platform, which I had bought for her as a goodwill gesture for $12 back in 2009 when she was brainstorming names. I just renewed it every year and let her use it. No contract, just a dad helping his kid. I found the original founder's agreement in a dusty file box that Amelia had left with me for safekeeping. I opened the box in the motel room, and there it was. Amelia's sloppy handwriting, the hurried signatures, and the disastrous oversight. The document, by its own terms, had a major clause that voided the IP license if a certain condition, related to timely profit distribution, was not met within the first 5 years. That condition was not met. They'd reinvested everything. The document was an absolute legal mess, but that IP clause gave me a lever. The next day, I didn't hire a lawyer. I went to a community legal clinic and leveraged my $2,000 to consult with an old, sharp as a tack, retired corporate attorney named Mr. Henderson. He saw the loophole immediately. He saw the potential for a catastrophic lawsuit that could freeze the company's assets and scare away every investor. "Arthur," Mr. Henderson said, tapping the document with a polished nail, "this isn't just a mistake. This is a nuclear button. Your daughter's company relies entirely on this proprietary algorithm. If you void the license, Nexus Solutions is just a fancy name for a server full of useless data." I wasn't trying to destroy my daughter. I was trying to buy back my dignity. The execution was slow, deliberate, and quiet. First, I had Mr. Henderson send a single, cryptic letter to the Nexus Solutions board, not to Amelia, but to the independent members. The letter simply stated that the owner of the company's core intellectual property had reason to believe the original licensing agreement was void and would be pursuing immediate arbitration. The reaction was immediate panic. Amelia's lawyers descended. They wanted to meet me. They assumed I was a disgruntled former employee trying to squeeze a few $1,000s out of them. They sent a junior associate to my motel. I didn't even speak to him. Mr. Henderson simply handed him a sealed envelope containing photocopies of the flawed founder's agreement and a formal notice that I was reclaiming the IP and the domain name was changing hands at midnight. That last detail was the masterstroke. The next morning, every employee, every partner, and every client who went to www.nexussolutions.com was redirected to a blank white page that simply read, "This server is temporarily unavailable. Please direct all inquiries to A. Morgan." The climax took place 1 week later in a sterile, glass-walled conference room in Amelia's corporate headquarters. The whole board was there. Amelia, Julian, Bryce, the pompous CEO, and 4 horrified investors. I walked in wearing a suit I'd bought secondhand, clean, pressed, and worn with a calm confidence I hadn't possessed in decades. I didn't look at Amelia. I looked at the man who held the purse strings, the largest investor, Mr. Sterling. Amelia started first, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "Dad, this is ridiculous. A joke. Give us the domain back. I'll give you double what the carriage house is worth." I held up my hand, stopping her. I looked at Mr. Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, you're the only person here who doesn't care about family drama. You care about liability. The core of this company is illegally using licensed material, and as of last week, it's also using an unregistered trademark, that domain name. I can sue for full damages and an injunction that would shut the company down for years." Bryce, the CEO, blustered. That IP agreement is worthless. It's an old draft. Mr. Henderson calmly placed a certified letter on the table. Under Nevada corporate law, unless a subsequent, fully executed, and properly witnessed document formally replaces the previous one, the earliest standing document, regardless of its flaws, holds potential standing in arbitration, and we are willing to take that chance. The room went silent. The investors looked at Amelia. Her face was turning a mottled purple and white. Julian, her fiancé, just kept whispering, "Fix this, Amelia, fix this." Finally, Amelia slammed her fist on the table. She looked right at me, her eyes raw and wet, not with sorrow, but with the cold, bitter realization of consequences. "What do you want, Arthur?" she hissed, using my first name, the last vestige of their corporate professionalism. I leaned back in the comfortable leather chair and felt a wave of quiet, profound relief wash over me. It wasn't the joy of a winner. It was the cessation of 20 years of chronic, emotional pain. "I don't want the company, Amelia," I said, my voice steady and low. "I want the debt repaid, the debt of my dignity, the debt of my opportunity, and the debt of my life savings. I am the sole owner of the IP that is currently worth $50 million, and I will sell it back to Nexus Solutions for the amount that fully compensates the sole IP owner and resolves the potential lawsuits." My final demand was not a number I pulled out of the air. It was the estimated value of the company's projected profits for the next 5 years, an astronomical figure. But Mr. Henderson was a negotiator. We settled on a single massive $8 million buyout for the IP and a lifetime non-disclosure agreement. It crippled her personal holdings and forced her to sell off a substantial stake in the company to meet the payment. But it saved the company from collapse. When the papers were signed and the wire transfer confirmed, I looked at her one last time. She was slumped in her chair, tears of pure burning fury running down her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered, her voice broken. I didn't give her a triumphant speech. I just stood up, gathered my papers, and said the words I should have said on her porch. "You don't throw away what you claim to love, Amelia. You value it. You threw away your father, and now you know the price tag." I walked out of that glass office and into the sunlight. $8 million. It wasn't about the money. It was the receipt for my soul. I took the money. I had to. It was the only language she understood. I bought a small, humble house far away from the city, up in the mountains. I finally have a studio with skylights. I finished the painting I started 30 years ago. The one I put down to pick up a mop and a forklift lever. It's of a little girl, fast asleep, with a worn-out man rocking her in the moonlight. I'm at peace now. I learned a brutal lesson. You can't love someone into being a good person. And sometimes, the only way to get your dignity back is to make the person who stole it pay a premium. I don't know what happened to Amelia. I hear things. The company is smaller, Julian left, and the mansion is up for sale. I didn't cheer. I just felt a quiet relief. That rot was finally clearing out. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt that deep, cold burn of betrayal, or the satisfaction of a truly earned victory, smash that like button and tell us in the comments, what's the most satisfying, silent revenge you've ever witnessed or had the courage to enact? And of course, subscribe for more stories like this. Stories that prove that just because someone throws you out, it doesn't mean your worth is in the trash.